You can spend years working on yourself. You learn to communicate without exploding. You stop chasing every argument. You learn how to say no. You stop explaining every decision as if you're standing in a courtroom defending your existence. And then you go back home. Maybe it's a birthday, a holiday, a Sunday dinner. And within 20 minutes, someone talks to you like you're still the difficult teenager you were 15 years ago. You stay quiet and they call it attitude. You set a boundary and suddenly you're selfish. You make a decision without consulting everyone, and now you think you're better than the family. And that's when you realize something strange. You changed, but the role they gave you didn't. So what happens when the black sheep finally stops playing the part everyone expects them to play? If psychology and self-development help you understand your own patterns a little better, subscribe to the channel. That's exactly what we explore here. There's a belief many of us carry into healing. If I become healthier, my relationships will become healthier too. Sometimes they do. But sometimes, at least at first, the opposite happens. Because families aren't just collections of individuals. They're systems of relationships, expectations, habits, and roles. And systems become organized around what is predictable. Imagine 5 people carrying a heavy table. Over time, everyone adjusts their grip. One person carries more weight on the left. Someone barely carries any. Another keeps the whole thing steady whenever it starts to tilt. Nobody discusses this arrangement. They simply adapt to it. Now imagine one person suddenly says, "I can't carry this corner anymore." The weight doesn't disappear. It shifts. And the first response from everyone else may not be, "I'm glad you're taking care of yourself." It may be, "Hey, pick your side back up." That's what changing an old family role can feel like. Maybe your corner was being the one who apologized first. Maybe you kept everyone calm. Maybe you absorbed criticism because fighting back created even more chaos. Maybe you became the responsible one so early that people forgot you were ever supposed to be taken care of too. Or maybe your role was being the problem. The one everyone could point toward whenever something felt uncomfortable. These roles can become something like invisible contracts. I'll keep the peace. I won't talk about what happened. I'll solve everyone's problems. I'll make sure nobody gets angry. I'll tolerate this because we're family. I'll keep needing you so you can keep feeling needed. The strange thing is that you probably never agreed to any of it. You adapted. And children are incredibly good at adapting. A child can learn to walk into a room and detect tension before anyone speaks. A teenager can become the family mediator. Someone can learn to cook, clean, care for siblings, comfort adults, solve crises, and keep everything functioning long before they're emotionally ready for that responsibility. From the outside, people might call that child mature, responsible, independent, and maybe they are. But sometimes what looks like extraordinary independence began as a simple realization. If I don't handle this, nobody will. Then that child grows up. And now everyone admires how strong they are. But receiving help feels uncomfortable. Rest feels irresponsible. Saying no creates guilt. Someone being disappointed in them feels almost dangerous. This is why leaving a family role isn't always dramatic. Sometimes the first sign that you're leaving it is surprisingly small. You stop explaining yourself. You used to say, "Wait, that's not what I meant. Let me explain. I promise I'm not angry. Here's why I couldn't come. I didn't mean to upset anybody." Now you say, "I can't make it. That doesn't work for me. I don't agree. I understand you're upset." And then, you stop. For someone who spent years managing other people's reactions, that silence can feel unbearable. Your mind starts producing explanations you could send. Maybe I should call. Maybe I sounded rude. Maybe I should apologize. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am selfish. But here's an important distinction. Feeling guilty doesn't automatically mean you've done something wrong. Sometimes guilt is information about your behavior. And sometimes guilt is the emotional residue of doing something you're simply not accustomed to doing. So instead of asking only, "Do I feel guilty?" try asking something more useful. Did I violate my values? Or did I violate someone's expectation of me? Those are not always the same thing. And this is often where the pushback begins. Someone jokes that you've changed. Your privacy gets called secrecy. Your independence gets interpreted as rejection. A relative brings up something you did 10 years ago as evidence that you're still the same person. Someone tells another family member to talk some sense into you. Or maybe something even more confusing happens. The moment you return to your old behavior, everyone becomes comfortable again. You apologize. You take responsibility for everyone's feelings. You say yes when you wanted to say no. And suddenly the tension disappears. That's important information. not necessarily proof that anyone is consciously manipulating you. Human systems often resist change without anyone sitting down and planning it. Predictability feels safe. When you change, the people around you have to adjust. Some families eventually do. Some relationships actually become healthier. Others resist. And sometimes, when the person carrying a particular role finally leaves it, the role moves to somebody else. The sibling who could do no wrong becomes the difficult one. The quiet relative becomes the target. The person everyone praised suddenly becomes the person everyone criticizes. And if you've ever watched that happen, notice what it reveals. If the role can move from person to person, then the role cannot be your identity. If this is connecting with something you've lived through, tell me in the comments what changed when you stopped playing your old family role. And if this kind of psychology helps you put words to experiences that were difficult to explain, give the video a like. But there's another part of this that gets much less attention. You can leave the role physically, and still carry it psychologically. You can move across the country. You can stop attending family gatherings. You can build a career, have your own home, create relationships completely separate from your childhood, and still hear their voices every time you make a decision. What are they going to think? They'll say I've changed. They'll think I'm selfish. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I really am the problem. At that point, nobody from your family even has to be in the room. You've learned to anticipate the room. That's why physical distance and psychological separation aren't the same thing. You can live 1,000 miles away and still organize your life around avoiding someone's imaginary disappointment. And you can live 10 minutes away while developing the ability to remain connected without surrendering your identity. In family psychology, there's a useful concept called differentiation. In simple terms, it's the ability to remain yourself while emotionally connected to other people. I can love you without agreeing with you. I can understand your disappointment without automatically fixing it. I can listen to your opinion without turning it into my identity. I can change my mind without betraying you. And I can make a decision you dislike without needing to make you the villain. That's a much harder form of independence. Because rebellion can still revolve around the family. If they say left, you go right. If they approve, you reject it. If they value something, you make sure everyone knows you don't. It feels independent, but they're still determining your direction. They're just doing it in reverse. And this creates another identity trap. For many people, discovering the phrase black sheep is incredibly freeing. For the first time, there's a way to describe the experience. Maybe you weren't uniquely defective. Maybe questioning the family didn't automatically make you the problem. So saying, I'm the black sheep and I'm proud of it, can be an important stage. But eventually there's another question worth asking. Who are you when you no longer need to be the black sheep either? Who would you become if you didn't need to prove that they were wrong about you? Because if your entire identity becomes, I'm nothing like my family, your family is still standing at the center of your identity. You're still building yourself around them. Healing can eventually become quieter than that. And boundaries are part of that process, but boundaries are often misunderstood. A useful boundary begins with your behavior, not with controlling somebody else's. So there are 3 questions worth asking yourself. First, am I protecting myself or am I trying to punish them? Those can look similar from the outside but feel very different inside. Second, am I saying no because something conflicts with my values, or am I saying yes because I'm afraid of someone's reaction? And third, perhaps the hardest one, can I tolerate being misunderstood without immediately abandoning myself? That doesn't mean you should never explain yourself. Communication matters. It doesn't mean criticism is always wrong. Sometimes you will make mistakes. Sometimes your family will have a point. Growing beyond an assigned role doesn't make you automatically right. But there's a difference between taking responsibility for something you've actually done and desperately trying to earn permission to be who you are. Sometimes someone will misunderstand you. Sometimes they'll keep believing an outdated version of you. And you may discover that no perfect combination of words can force another person to update the story they carry in their head. That can hurt. But it can also be freeing. Because healing doesn't have to look like cutting everyone off. For one person, healing might mean rebuilding a close relationship with clearer boundaries. For someone else, it might mean cordial but limited contact. For another person, temporary distance may be necessary. And in some situations, someone may decide that no contact is the healthiest option available to them. There isn't one correct amount of distance for every family. The deeper goal is freedom. Enough emotional freedom to make choices without constantly being controlled by fear, guilt, or the role you were assigned years ago. And you'll often notice that freedom in very ordinary moments. You say no and don't check your phone every 30 seconds. Someone is disappointed and you don't immediately rush in to repair their feelings. You ask for help instead of automatically doing everything yourself. You rest before reaching complete exhaustion. You make a mistake, apologize for the actual mistake, and don't turn it into evidence that you're fundamentally broken. You receive criticism and consider it instead of automatically believing it. You enjoy something without imagining the sarcastic comments someone in your family would make about it. Those moments don't look dramatic, but psychologically they can be enormous, because eventually you may return to that same family table. Someone makes the same old comment. Someone brings up the same old story. Someone looks at you and sees a version of you that hasn't existed for years. And for a moment you feel the old reflex. Explain yourself. Defend yourself. Prove yourself. Make them understand. But this time you notice the feeling without obeying it. You don't attack them. You don't collapse either. You simply understand something you couldn't understand before. That may be the version of me they know how to see. It doesn't have to be the version of me I continue becoming. And maybe that's one of the hardest parts of growing beyond the black sheep role. Healing isn't finally winning the family trial. It isn't collecting enough evidence to prove you were innocent all along. It isn't convincing everyone that they misunderstood you. Sometimes healing is realizing you no longer need the verdict. You can own your mistakes without owning everyone's projections. You can care about people without carrying their emotions for them. You can love your family without giving them authority over your identity. And you don't have to keep holding your corner of that invisible table simply because everyone became accustomed to you carrying the weight. More importantly, you don't need to replace the old role with another one. You don't have to become the hero, the rebel, the truth teller, the strong one, or even the black sheep forever. You don't need a better role. You need the freedom to become a person outside the cast. So let me know in the comments, what changed when you stopped playing the role your family expected from you? Did they eventually adjust, or did they push harder to pull you back into it? And if this video gave you something useful to think about, hit the like button. Then watch the video that's appearing on your screen right now, because it takes this conversation one step deeper into understanding the patterns that can quietly follow us from childhood into adult life.